I, Philippe Pinel, developed moral therapy for mentally disabled patients that were being maltreated because people thought that mental illnesses were caused by demonic possession. The patients were experiencing physical and emotional abuse. They were sometimes chained and kept in dungeons, experienced bloodletting, purging, and other forms of physical abuse. As an experiment, I asked for the patients to be unchained so that I could observe them. From there, I went on to opting humane treatment for the patients. I proposed the idea that mental illnesses were caused by psychological or social stress, cognitive congenital conditions, or psychological injury. I was born April 20th, 1745, in France. I came from a family of surgeons and physicians. I myself was a physician. I opted to study religion, but then I left to study medicine. I believe that people under my care should be treated like patients rather than animals. I worked at an asylum in Paris, France. I was believed to be the first to free men from their chains, but the first was an ex-patient, Poussin, who was an untitled governor. But I argued that previous developments of moral therapy were overlooked, such as Poussin's and William Tukes, who opened a humanitarian asylum. The development of moral therapy was a product of the Enlightenment. I asked to have patients of mental illnesses unchained for experimental purposes. I allowed them to have sunny rooms and exercise. I overall gave them a more humane treatment, because patients would be held in dungeons and be physically and mentally abused. The independent variable is the environment the patients were in. The dependent variable was the mentally ill patients. There was no control group. The experimental group was the mentally ill patients. My hypothesis was that if the environment that the mentally ill patients were in was changed, they would not cause any harm. Despite of the previous assumptions, the mentally ill patients would cause danger. In the United States, the first to advocate moral therapy was Benjamin Rush, because he himself experienced mental diseases. Another person was Dorothy Dix, who opted for humane treatment of patients in the U.S. decades after the death of Benjamin Rush. She wanted patients to have a spacious and well-ventilated place with beautiful grounds. In conclusion, the purpose of the experiment was to give a more humane treatment to mentally ill patients. The improvements that can be made to the experiment are to have a variation in the types of mental illnesses that patients have and to run more trials. Another thing is that it did not cure patients. It also made patients more dependent of the asylum and the doctors and created chains that were said to be harder to escape than physical chains.